But first off, I will start. It's good to see you're all churchgoers because you're all sitting in the back and no one's up front. So I know what kind of crowd I have here at least. So we'll fire into a couple things today, not necessarily in the order that Drew went off on it, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a narrative today, right? So where we're going in ag policy in DC, what it looks like, why it looks the way it does, and potentially how it might look different starting in January, depending on what the House and Senate look like. As Drew mentioned, work on ag policy. I've been in DC, I was there for 12 years. Been with ABA for, almost 10, which is crazy, because I don't feel that old to have 10 years at one place under my belt. But I grew up on a dairy farm in Minnesota. So doing politics is a lot better than milking cows, I can tell you that. But we're out of dairy, we're just corn, soybeans now, some steers. ABA's been around since 1875. We'll be celebrating our sesquicentennial soon, 150 years. Our first convention could fit in that little building. Now if you come to our annual convention, there'll be a couple thousand people there. So we've grown in size and scope just like the banking industry has. We have $22 trillion in assets that we represent now at ABA, which is crazy. Full scope of the banking industry, all size, shapes, and forms. We have an agricultural bankers committee with 14 bankers from across the country. My biggest goal on that committee is to make sure that we have asset and geographic diversity, all right? I try to get as many different types of lending as possible. If I have someone from Kentucky that does corn and soybeans, and I have someone from Iowa that does corn and soybeans, we're not gaining a lot from a national perspective, right? But we want to make sure we have the folks from California, right? Land of fruits and nuts, making sure those are covered. We want to make sure that we have corn, soybeans, wheat, the whole spectrum, right? David White from Kansas sits on the committee right now. Some of you might know him. Jason Smith from Nebraska, another local type, sits on the committee as well. So you're well represented. This part of the world is on the committee. For those of you that are good at colors, the purple states are where we have representation on both the Ag Committee and our Planning Committee. We hold a conference every year that's anywhere from 600 to 700 bankers. It'll be in Omaha this year. We'll get to that towards the end. What does ABA do in DC? All right, we got a full spectrum of things we cover. Basically, if it's a committee that deals with banking, finance in any way, shape, or form, we're going to be active in that committee. In the last couple of years, for example, we've been active in the Education Committee. Why are bankers hanging out the Education Committee? Simple things like having ATMs on college campuses. Stuff like that, right? Student loan issues, etc. We're in the Armed Services Committee. Why? Military bases. There's some issues around banks on military bases. But then you have all the mainline committees, right? Financial services, banking, appropriations, ways and means, which is your tax committee. And then agriculture. Agriculture's been a big committee for us for a long time. We're trying to make sure we have you covered as lenders across the board. Here's one big issue that's come up lately, and this feeds into some of the things that we're dealing with in DC. 1071 rule. How many of you really like filling out extra paperwork why you didn't make a loan to somebody? That's all 1071's about, right? Fair lending, making sure that you document why you didn't. What's interesting from an agricultural perspective, ags get dragged into that right now. One thing I brought up with the CFPB folks over and over again is if you're going to bring us into this, maybe you should check out something called the Farm Credit System. They'd like to fill out paperwork too. Lo and behold, the rule comes out, farm credit was included. So we're cooperative lenders, and what I mean by that is not just the Farm Credit System. I've really been pushing that input suppliers, your farm co-ops that are doing lending, non-collateralized one-year lending. If they, CFPB, truly cares about the consumer, they should be tracking every one of those things that happens. Because you have to. Why not them? Now, with the beauty of this whole deal by dragging Farm Credit in, Farm Credit's begging the ag committees in DC to do something about this. So we're like, hey, we'll take some allies, right? If they don't have to do it, we shouldn't have to do it. If we have to do it, they should have to do it. That's one of the big arguments we're making. We had a 48-page comment letter, right, that went out. Comment letters are usually 5 to 6 pages, so that should tell you our opinion on this rule. We expect the final rule to come out sometime towards the end of the year, in Q4. We're not exactly sure when, but it'll be likely in Q4. They got a lot of comments they have to go through, and they have to respond to all of those and take those into account through the process. If you are unhappy with 1071 or don't want to be part of it, ABA.com, you can find this issue, send a letter, do all those types of things. And I'll have my contact info at the end too if you need to get connected to people internally. All right, so let's go down this path here. This chart is getting out of date, right? But there's one reason I keep it up here. One, I'm not an economist and I'm not a lawyer. I am just a swamp creature from Washington, D.C. that's trying to survive every day there. I love this chart for a few reasons. And this will give you a little bit of the narrative I'm trying to get you down. Right here, we dropped off pretty hard on total farm debt at the end of 2020. Why? You all intuitively know. Sunny money, right? Secretary Perdue dollars that went out the door. $46 billion in money. I got asked by the media, based on this chart, why don't banks want to lend to farmers anymore? I tell you that because that's a narrative we're fighting against. Debt goes down for the first time since the mid-1980s. And why did it go down there? I'm a little too young to remember what happened, but I've heard plenty of stories. For those of you who are experienced lenders, I'm not going to call you old, experienced lenders, you remember what happened here. Literally the first time debt really went down, and all of a sudden you don't care about farmers anymore. Think about fighting that narrative, right? Debt is back up, has been back up. This was all operating lines. You know the irony of this? In 2020, ag real estate loans actually went up. That's how far down operating lines went. So we're watching this, making sure people understand. You've all seen this chart 5,000 times by now. By 5,000 different economists, so there's 10,000 different opinions on it, right? Farm income has been increasing, has been for a long time. Net farm income. This is the best time in the 10,000 years of civilized agriculture to be in agriculture. Right? Farmers are flush with cash. Life is pretty good. $8 corn the other day. My dad is ticked that I told him to sell corn at $5.25. I've been hanging around all of you too long because our cost of production was below $5.25. So I said sell it. Can't lose money making a profit. Now I'm the son who's not favored in the house anymore. Right? How much more could we have made? Okay. We made money. We're good. We're moving on. But look where this is. What's going on? We peaked, right? This is ethanol. 9, 10, 11, right? And then it really started kicking in. But we're in a good spot. Generally in a good spot. This is one other thing that leads into the narrative, right? So farmers are flush with cash. And I say these almost in negative ways because I'm trying to feed you a narrative. Farmers are flush with cash. Holy smokes, sunny money, right? Went down a little bit in 21, projected to be down in 22. Payments to farmers. So, we have this as well. I got to give Farm Bureau credit here, by the way. They predicted $25 billion in 21. It was like 24.2. So, give their economists props, right? They hit that right on. But look at where these numbers are over time. 10, 11, 16 sometimes, maybe over 20, 22, 46, 25. When was the last farm bill? 18? Right here. So what narrative are we feeding? Money's getting sent to farmers, right? My last one, then we'll roll into where we're going on this. Farm size and production continues to increase. Okay? 9% of farms account for, what number do I have up there? 66% of production, 33% of the assets. Now, what is a farm by USDA numbers? $1,000 in ag production. That's what counts as a farm. So So that makes the small number a little interesting, right? But farms are getting bigger. They're more consolidated. Our rural communities are feeling it. If you're a $100 million bank, your legal lending limit is what? $2.5 million? That's not even an operating line for a 10,000 acre wheat farmer. So as we roll into a farm bill, farmers are flush with cash. Probably thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill, right? You can already see this debate happening on the House floor next year. Thanks to the last Farm Bill, farmers made all kinds of money. We know what happened. That was pandemic assistance, right? And MFP payments and every other darn thing that went through. But I'm setting you all up to be ready for the next year and a half of this discussion of where we're going. Why ag policy might be a little bit of a struggle to going forward. Why there's going to be talk around things like, why does crop insurance look the way it does? Right? Why do we still have ARC and PLC? Going back here, they got all kinds of money. They don't need that extra assistance. But we all know it's been about as good as it can be for a while, right? West of the Mississippi, let's not forget, what are our drought levels right now? D2, D3, depending on where you are. Some of this assistance is going to be necessary to keep farmers in business. So now that I've thoroughly depressed all of you, thinking about what ag policy is going to look like, you just have to keep this in the back of your mind. All right? It's going to take a coalition of everybody in D.C. from an ag standpoint, making sure we're in a good spot. One thing I am nervous about, and when some of the commodity groups, I see we're recording this back there, if they see this, they may not like it. But when they start talking about ARC and PLC payments need to be higher, we need to reset baselines, that could get dangerous very quickly because of all the things I just told you about, right? In a lot of ways, the Farm Bill could look identical without much changes, or we could reset everything and then drive everybody nuts. Now, let's get into the other thing. Who's around? Who's going to be around? Right now, there's about 185 members of Congress that have rural in their district some way, shape, or form. Those numbers could go down after this next, actually should go down. Probably going to be more in the 170s. Plus, if you have 50 new members of Congress that have never done a farm bill before, each one of them has different interests. They don't understand why a farm bill exists, why it needs to look the way it does, all those types of things. It all feeds this narrative. Why do we need to have this thing? How does it help farmers? All right? I kind of let you sit on that cliffhanger for a second there. Let's go through a couple things. What's going on in D.C., things we're paying attention to as we go through. Who's in leadership? Okay? We'll go through that. What's going on in the committees? The agriculture committees. ECORA. How many people have heard of ECORA? Oh yeah, this is my crowd. All right. Farm credit system. Any farm credit lenders in here? Good, because you're going to be pissed by the end of this thing. All right. Rural development. Hemp and cannabis. We'll talk a little bit about that because it's fun. Why not? Carbon credits a little bit, crop insurance, and then a few strategies on the farm credit side. All right, let's get into leadership. And some people are probably sick of this joke if you've seen me speak at other places, but I think it's kind of funny. There's a Who song, right? The new boss is the same as the old boss. There you go, Secretary Vilsack, back for another set. If he gets to 16 years, he will be the longest serving Secretary of Agriculture in the history of the United States. Who's the longest? Does anybody know? Oh, man, you're going to fail Jeopardy if you ever get on there. James Wilson, he was underneath McKinley, Roosevelt, and Taft at the turn of the last century. I think Secretary Vilsack would very much like to get to 16 years, be the longest serving ever. I think he's going to have a lot of difficulty in 2024 retaining his position. All right, the way things are going right now. Deputy Secretary Jewel Brownell from Virginia, first African-American woman to ever be Deputy Secretary of USDA. Which is great. She's actually, from everything I've been told by the Virginia bankers, was great to work with when she was Commissioner of Agriculture there. Unfortunately, the way DC is going right now, you can't have in-person meetings at USDA. So we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and actually have a conversation with her yet. Yeah, we're still lagging on that, right? On that side of the world. But one thing I want you to look at up here, positions that have been filled, positions that have not been filled. Okay? We were almost a year and a half into the administration, we still have positions not filled. Generally, at least under the Obama administration and Trump administrations, they had a lot of these spots filled out within a year, right? Some always take a while, it's true. The Senate does have some random holds on people, but it shouldn't be this bad, right? Some of them haven't even had hearings yet, which is insane. So, here's a big one. Food and Nutrition Service, not filled out. Food safety. Thought we liked food safety, guess not. Research and economics. And then here's a big one people are getting mad about, trade. There still isn't an ag trade person. Might be good to have one right now. There's a few issues going on in that space, right? So it's kind of interesting what hasn't been filled out yet. The other side of it, the Senate is not so busy they can't do these hearings. And I would say that with a group of senators sitting here in front of you. Now they would tell you they are so busy they cannot get anything done. That's BS. They are not that busy. From an ag side of the world, it's pretty clear that this is just not a priority to get USDA filled out. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Let's go to the Senate Ag Committee. The chair is Senator Stabenow from Michigan. She was ranking member for the last almost 10 years. She was chair during the 2008 Farm Bill. Okay, again, new boss looks like the old boss because it is the old boss. And then you have ranking member John Bozeman from Arkansas. He's actually a cattle farmer in Arkansas. If the Senate flips, they'll just change positions. All right, they're not reinventing the wheel. In the House, David Scott from Georgia, first African American chair of the Ag Committee. His district in Georgia, and he's a guy who grew up on basically a sharecropping farm, was farms and a lot of agriculture. Now it's basically Atlanta suburbs. So his district has changed a lot. The way he approaches issues have changed a lot. Good thing for us, although it hasn't worked out the way we thought it would by now, he's also on financial services. He may be one of the friendlier Democrats on banking issues. But we haven't been able to take advantage of that at all because this environment is just ridiculous. And then ranking member is Glenn Thompson from Pennsylvania, which is a big dairy district. And he might be the first ranker or chair from Pennsylvania since like the 1870s or something like that. What's one thing all of you probably noticed about where they're from? We're not west of the Mississippi, are we? Right? No Kansas Big One. I know you're a prideful crowd here, right? Even Frank Lucas from Oklahoma, when he was chair, at least had that kind of Western Plains thing going on, right? None of that. These are your folks that are going to be driving ag policy. I talked about all the money farmers are making, all this other stuff, right? Then you got a bunch of folks from areas that aren't necessarily going to understand corn, soybeans, why wheat works the way it does, why cattle works the way it does, etc. Let's go through some of the things they've been talking about. I love this meeting list, hearing list. If this doesn't give you a good idea of the way DC is approaching ag, I don't know what will, right? Farm Bill expires in 23. Generally, this time of year, you're having hearings about Title I, which is the commodity title, right? Title I, good, bad, what needs to change? Then you have a group complaining, and then you have like the DC hacks that are on one panel, you get academics, you get some farmers, right? And you have a whole conversation. We haven't had that conversation. All we had so far on Title I is commodity group perspectives, and they had like 12 of them in the room, which is crazy, right? You can't have everybody on stage at the same time trying to talk. And they want the hearings to be like an hour and a half. So what are we learning? Not much. But as we go through this, first hearing that was held in House Ag Committee, electric vehicles in rural America. Pandemic has hit, the world's falling apart, but at least we're going to figure out electric vehicles in rural America. Right? And I'm not trying to, the majority
everybody has the ability to do what they want to do, right? Whoever's in the majority. That's the beauty of politics in some ways. But I think we're not preparing ourselves for September of 23 very well right now. Let's get to this one. This is one of my favorites. Sustainability in the livestock sector, environmental gain and economic viability. There's going to be another hearing next week on cattle markets and what's going on. I think it was interesting, the group that was here before me was real-time payments. There's a lot of talk about ACH and cattle and what that means, because there's been so many checks that have been bouncing and stuff like that, right? You're kind of in the center of that universe. But instead, we're talking about sustainability and climate and carbon and all these things. But I can tell you this, no matter what happens over the next Farm Bill, climate, carbon, all those things are going to be dragged into that conversation over and over again. My worry from the banking perspective, you cannot make a guaranteed loan unless, pick your favorite parameters, right? That's a non-starter. I'll tell you from an ABA perspective, this might, I see my KBA counterpart, it might get me in trouble, but I don't really care. That's a non-starter for ABA. It's a non-starter for you as bankers. We can't put limits around credit. You put limits around credit, how are you ever going to get someone into ag, right? It's not that hard to figure out. And then I love that we're going after the livestock sector too. The easiest way to get into agriculture is begin farming. Buy some cows, put them on 5 acres, right? So this is where we are on a lot of this stuff going forward. Let's shift gears a little bit to something a little more positive, or at least I think it's positive. ECORA, the Enhancing Credit Opportunities in Rural America Act. It would remove the taxation on income from interest on farm real estate loans. Levels you out with our good friends. Our good friends is a DC term for someone you don't like very much. Our good friends, the Farm Credit System. Levels us out. When people say, hey, you got this residential thing, right? Town's less than 2,500. Farm Credit can lend to that. We literally copied what Farm Credit is. And we're trying to make this happen, all right? One thing we will have in the next slide, we'll show some of this. We are working on a letter you can actually give to your customers that they can send to members of Congress. So I, as a farmer, want ECORA to happen because we can all show up in nice suit and tie, banker look, right? Or your favorite company polo, bank polo. It's different if your customers show up. The other thing I will ask all of you as we get into this, and thank Congressman Mann and especially Senator Moran. Senator Moran is carrying water for Kansas on that big time for you Kansans, right? Nebraska, you got Congressman Bacon, and the rest are holding back, right? So you need to work the Nebraskans a little more. Oklahoma needs to be worked a little harder too, from the grassroots level. But Kansas kicking ass here, all right? Taking names. What can you do? Okay, how many of you sit on a Farm Bureau board, county board, or cattle, or corn? Pick your favorite commodity, right? If you sit on any of those boards, or have customers that do, and you want ECORA to happen, bring it up at the local level. Bring it up at the local level. Put a resolution in your county. That will trickle up. All right? Always does. It's the way those organizations are supposed to work. Not always work, but supposed to work. We need farm groups to support ECORA. Here's where you can go to get information. SecureAmericanOpportunity.com. Like I say, within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a letter you can basically nab and give to your customers, and your customers can send. All right? Also, Secure American Opportunity is really good for not just you as bankers, but your customers. Bankers and well, credit union folks might not get in on some of this as much, but there's a plethora of issues there that you can get folks to sign on to and send letters, right? Work with your state association. In Kansas, it kicks in what? January 1 of 23? State level ECORA kicks in. For those of you who are in nearby states, you think they're going to have a big advantage on lending? Doing real estate lending? They don't pay any state tax on farm real estate, right? and then have conversations with your folks. All right. So part of my talk today was to talk about strategies to go after like farm credit. Here's one: get eCora done. That's the biggest. Levels out farm real estate. Now I will tell you this: is at the end of the line, are we done? You gonna fund my GoFundMe, my retirement account, and I don't have to work anymore? No. I mean, on a farm credit front, there's still appraisers, right? They have in-house appraisers. We don't, right? You have the fact they can sell crop insurance in-house. Banks can't, right? Stuff like that. Also, the appraisals are always 120% of value. Everybody ever notice that? Farm credit appraiser? It's always right at 120%. It's crazy. I don't know how they come up with the math, but it works every time. Let's talk about a couple other programs that we got right now. Small meat processors. Any of you want to start a small meat processing plant? If you do, there's guaranteed money. All right? So you can get into direct and guaranteed money. I will tell you, and we went through the hearing side before, right? Different hearings that are going on. They're not going to stop talking about cattle and livestock and some of those things. I think this will be a well-funded program for a little while, just because of that, right? The administration wants to have opportunities for folks to go against larger business. Here it is, right? Not a ton on the guaranteed side right now, but I think there'll be more if we use it. Because fun fact, how many of you use conservation guaranteed loans? It's like $150 million a year there. Nobody uses them. They've never increased the program because nobody uses it. If you use those programs, they'll increase the amount. All right? So something to look into. It's only been around since October, not even October, July of last year. Hemp. You got hemp here? Is Kansas a hemp state? No? You guys don't have any fun? Which version of marijuana are you? Nothing?
No marijuana. You can grow whatever below 4 THC hemp.
So only the Okies from Muskogee get to have it. What's that? Yeah, I know it's medicinal down there because they've run into some issues with, because we don't have SAFE Act done. This is one of my favorite issues I've ever heard, that Oklahoma's collecting tax on the medicinal, but they can't use it to pay federal loans that they have, because then that's illegal. Which is so fantastic in so many ways. That we've gotten to the point where a state is actually violating federal law. SAFE Act needs to happen. It needs to happen way sooner than it's passed the House, overwhelmingly passed the House, just needs to get through the Senate. What's holding it up is criminal justice reform. Some folks want the SAFE Act to be part of this larger criminal justice reform deal, which then scares every Republican senator away. And not just away, they run as fast as possible the other way. So we're dealing with a political issue right now. If we get this done by the end of the year, we'll be in a great place. For those of you who are in Oklahoma, border Oklahoma, Colorado, if we get SAFE Act through, we're in a real good spot. For states where they do hemp and marijuana, if you own a tractor, farmer owns a tractor, financed it through you, and they pull around a wagon that has hemp in it, but they also pull around a wagon that has marijuana in it, they use the marijuana proceeds to pay for that tractor, you're in violation of federal law. That's how ridiculous this is right now. How are you supposed to segregate all the funds and do all that? SAFE Act will fix a lot of those issues, just by making it legal to bank it. Also, other fun fact, we were talking about 1071 earlier and all the paperwork and other stuff, right? There are actually folks who say if SAFE Act goes through, it will make more nefarious activity happen. I don't know what the heck they're talking about, because if SAFE Act happens and the money starts going through the banking and credit union system, there's going to be way more documentation about what's happening with that money. It's actually going to be better and safer and all those fun things, but you know, what would we know? Just people that work in banking and finance every day. All right, 37 states are medical marijuana states. Did you realize it was that many? Right? That's a ton. 18 are retail. Those are the fun states. Where you can get after it whenever you want, I guess. And then 9 states have legalized since 20. And here's the big one for you. $25 billion in sales in 21. crazy. The numbers are absolutely crazy. So it's not going away from us. Other ag issues, carbon credits. Any of your customers been approached on carbon credits? Be careful. Just know what the contract says, right? Farm Journal actually has a lot of good material on credit, carbon credit markets, and some of that. As far as understanding what it looks like, what it should look like, that's one place to look if you're trying to direct your customers. Legislation has been introduced in the House and the Senate to create a market and set some standards around carbon credits. What is a ton of carbon worth? Right? Some of those things. Get that figured out. And then crop insurance. I always talk about crop insurance because we like risk management. I've had people ask this is not the Ed Elfmann position, this is the just representing finance side. What would you like the subsidy to be on crop insurance? I'm like, we can start at 100, work it down from there. Because the most risk management we can get, the better, right? We'll take it any way we can. All right, let's talk farm credit real fast. It's only $365 billion. It's actually closer to 380 now. Would be the 7th largest bank in the United States. They haven't had a full board regulating them in almost 3 years. Okay? They've grown over 63% in 10 years. If any bank that was 220 grew to 380 in 10 years, there would be congressional hearings. So we're pushing to have more congressional hearings, because there should be, from an oversight standpoint. Their effective tax rate's under 3%, right? And it's probably one of the biggest issues I work on all the time. Go to reformfarmcredit.org. My only suggestion, if you go to that site, if you have a doctor's appointment, don't drink coffee, go to that site, and then go to your doctor's appointment, because your blood pressure will be elevated. You don't need that, because there's so much good stuff there. Good information, things that will just make you go, what? My favorite is Farm Credit financed a server farm for Facebook, but I gotta give them credit, at least it had farm in the name. So at least they're getting there, right? All right, let's talk about a couple things that you can use, a couple tools that I hope people are aware of. How many of you use guaranteed loan programs at FSA? Right? Good program. At least we're increasing the limits. We are talking right now about whether we should ask to increase those again. If you recall, in the 2018 Farm Bill, we said $3.5 million. And we were this close till my senior senator from Minnesota put an amendment in to knock it from 3.5 to 1.75. And it's a good thing I wasn't in the committee room, because I was like, what the, right? Did that whole thing. We had that thing all the way through. So we're going to be looking at that again. One thing to be aware of, it's a 95% guarantee on beginning farmers. I think a lot of people aren't aware of that side of it. That was one of the compromises we got pulled out of that bill in 18. GFOs, the farm ownership side, right? And I just want you to be aware of what it would be used for, right? GFOs is farmland buildings. Operating loans are for everything else, essentially. Okay? But this crowd seems to know this, so I don't have to talk too much about it. Rural development. How many of you use rural development? If not, why not? Right? 80% guaranteed. You can get up to like 150 million, depending on which program it is. Right? Now I'll tell you this. Part of this talk is how to strategies with farm credit. If we're not going to use these farm credit well, so we got to make sure we're looking at these from the banking industry side. The other thing, those of you that do use rural development, please let us know if it's not working the way it's supposed to. Because we put a lot of time and effort into 1RD, and some people have complained to me about it, and I was like, it'd be nice to know so we could fix some of this stuff, right? Make it work. Farm Service Agency, we spent 30 years getting it to where it is. Rural development, I think we can do a lot faster than that, as long as we know what the issues are and get ahead of them. Here are the big programs that are part of 1RD. Business and industry, community facilities, REAP, and waste and water disposal, which I think is the sexiest of all the things that we get into. It's nothing like waste disposal. It's just get you going. But That's a good program if you have a muni, small muni that wants to have a project done, and it's once every 30 years type deal, right? We're looking into. So, again, 1RD was effective October of 2020. It's supposed to make all those programs easier to use. Common application, common forms, speeding up the process. The next thing I'm pushing on is the preferred lender side on rural development. You make 5 loans, or 7 loans, or 10, pick your favorite number. I really don't care what the number is, right? Across those 4 programs, now you can be a preferred lender. It speeds up the process even more. That's the next thing we're working on, hoping to get pushed through on this one. Sba Guaranteed Programs. How many of you use this for ag? Especially if you have facilities, right? The 504 program, you can use it. If you're, I know dairy uses it a lot. Another thing you can look at, good guarantees, 85%, 75%. So they're there. All right? Farmer Mac I'll talk about quickly. Farmer Mac, we have an alliance with them. You get 12.5%, 12.5 basis points rather, on loan advantage if you're an ABA member and you use Farmer Mac. I know if you're an ICBA member, they've got some sort of deal as well, but I like my organization more. Look into that if you haven't. I just have this more for information. And then lastly, I mean, we're here, Federal Home Loan Bank, here's all the products they've got, right? I think using them as another opportunity to go after farm credit makes a lot of sense, right? Because, and a federal home loan person can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can combine this with some of the other things that are going on, right? The guaranteed programs, some other things. There's ways you can help your customers drive down those interest rates and then make everything look the way it's supposed to look. And really help your customers out at the end of the day. Farm credit has a huge advantage. That's why ECORA is out there, right? It gives us step 1. That huge tax advantage can be used. Use the tools at your disposal. Use the tools at your disposal, including Federal Home Loan Bank, right? So let's make sure we have all those. The last thing I will say as we go through all of this, here is the list of ABA resources. You should be able to access most of these even if you're not an ABA member, but just have these in the back of your mind. And one thing I need to do is put federal home loans. I need to have a link to you guys as well. Just a place you can find stuff. We have an ag banking network as well that you can bounce ideas and things off of each other through an online portal. We have online classes. I passed. I took the class. I passed. I don't know if you should hire me to make a loan, but I did pass it. I understand how it works. But it's actually a really great course for someone who might be transitioning from like a teller to a loan officer side of the world. And the other thing we're looking at, and I'd be interested to hear what folks like you think, we want to offer a graduate level school for ag banking. I don't know for some of you at higher levels if that would make a difference in the hiring process or not, but we're thinking like Stonier, but for agriculture. For those of you who are familiar with the Stonier program. Maybe not as intensive, but something along those lines. Then we have all these skills and things at our disposal, right? Now, let's be honest, a lot of work is, you got to actually be in the field doing it all that, but it doesn't hurt to have the supplementals. If you ever get an ag lender survey, that's a Farmer Mac ABA survey, please fill it out. It helps us a lot figuring out what we need to talk about, what we need to work on. It doesn't take that long to fill out. And then lastly, last thing I'll say, all are invited to our conference. Now we do have pricing differences based on whether you're a member or not, because we're sneaky like that, right? I think we charge farm credit twice as much as an ABA member, just so you're aware. But Omaha, I've heard it called the Honolulu of the Midwest in November. It's beautiful. But it's a good conference. Those of you who have been there over the years, 6,700 bankers generally. I think our numbers are going to be a lot higher this year because you're all itching to get out and go to Omaha, obviously. We're putting together a pretty good session. One I'm working on, personal session I'm working on, cryptocurrencies, digital assets. What does it mean for agriculture? What are NFTs? How are they going to tie in? Stuff like that, right? We're looking at having a mental health one, for example, a whole session on just how you identify problems your customers might be having, stuff like that. So we're looking to pull that all together, have a good little conference. Omaha this year, it'll be Oklahoma City next year. So we're nice and close to all of you. But with that, contact info, okay? Email's the best way to get a hold of me. If you call me, it'll roll over to my cell phone if I'm not at my desk. Email me just about any time. I'll get back to you as fast as I can. We have 300 employees at ABA. If I don't have the answer, somebody does. Right? At the end of the day. So nothing is too crazy. The biggest thing I can do is connect you with the right people. That also goes for USDA type issues, congressional type issues. If you're working on rural development loan and you're having a problem getting it through, right? Let me know. We can connect you with the right people to move things through faster. So that's all my info there, but I think we actually have time for questions.
Oh, absolutely.
I was trying to give 10-15 minutes because I can sit here and talk forever. Yes, sir.
Any success in finding a Democrat senator to sign on to the Cora?
Not yet. Not yet.
I was hoping you would do.
Yeah, I have a theory on that, but I'm going to sound like hyper-partisan when I come up with it. But I think there's a real hesitancy to have wins in the banking industry right now, which is very frustrating because at the end of the day, Cora is more about the farmer customer, right? Love my bankers, don't get me wrong. Love all lenders because we don't exist without farmers don't exist. But at the end of the day, Cora is going to help the farmer because it's going to drive down interest rates, going to make you all more competitive, right? And it's only going to help the farmer. Now, what's the biggest talking point I've heard against Cora? Actually, two of my favorites so far. Bankers will pocket the money, which is just like, that's been going on since the 1400s and the Medici's created banking, right? Like, and the other is banks should be required to send the money, extra money they make from Cora back to the farm. That was a farm credit lobbyist that told me that. And I was like, you obviously don't understand how banking works. Because at the end of the day, folks, outside of increased volume, Cora is not going to be like a windfall for you, right? Because you're going to put it right in interest rate and basically be exactly where you are right now outside of new potential loans that come to the door, which will become then the kind of profit side. So kind of interesting from that side. But working on it. Do you have one in mind?
Oh, I got several in mind. Doug's got to identify that.
Yeah, Doug's got a blind that. And he's, I think he's cornered every senator in the U.S. Senate at this point. Got a good advocate there on that stuff. Any other questions out